Episode 24, Benz, the First Automobile Motorwagen, Part 3. Benz immediately went to see the Minister of the Interior of the Grand Duchy of Baden, where Mannheim was located. Benz, who had a friendly relationship with the minister, explained the issues he had been facing with the police. He said that the Motorwagen would be complete after just a bit more testing, and asked if the minister could help prevent the police from interfering with the tests. The minister, after hearing Benz's story, expressed his willingness to help. He said that he could override the police's restrictions using his authority and told Benz to wait at home for further contact. Benz expressed his gratitude and said he would invite the minister to the test drive ceremony once the Motorwagen was completed. The minister also showed interest and asked to be sure to be invited once it was finished. A few days later, Benz received another summons from the police station. He went to the station to meet the police chief, knocked and entered the office after being granted permission. The police chief stopped his work and looked at Benz with a calm but angry gaze. The police chief had recently been summoned by the Minister of the Interior and was advised not to interfere with Benz's Motorwagen test, and he immediately sensed that Benz had influenced the minister. Though he was angry about it, he couldn't ignore the minister's advice, so he called Benz back and decided to personally grant permission for the Motorwagen test. The police chief told Benz he was granting permission for the Motorwagen test and asked him to ensure it would not harm the citizens. When Benz agreed, the chief added one condition. He pointed out that although the Motorwagen was small, it moved quickly and could be dangerous, so for public safety, a speed limit would be imposed. He stipulated that within the city, the speed must be under 6 kilometers per 1 hour, and outside the city, under 11 kilometers per 1 hour. Benz was deeply dissatisfied inside. To properly test the Motorwagen, the engine and body needed to be pushed to their limits, but the speed limits made such testing impossible. However, he considered it a major achievement just to have received official permission from the police for the road test, so he decided to accept the chief's condition. Benz agreed to the chief's proposal, but inwardly resolved to carry out extreme tests out of sight of the police. However, this plan of Benz was one step behind the chief. The police chief planned to impose the same speed restrictions not only during testing, but also after the tests were completed on all vehicles Benz produced. As time passed and Benz realized this, he bitterly regretted accepting the chief's proposal. Lying back down again, Benz started thinking deeply once more. After pondering for several days, one day Benz suddenly clapped his hands, smiled, and got up. In the summer of 1886, thanks to all the previous tests, Benz completed an improved version of the Motorwagen Model 2 and held an official test driving ceremony. At the ceremony were the police chief, many citizens of Mannheim, several nobles, and the Minister of the Interior who had helped Benz. Benz approached the minister, who had helped ensure the successful tests, smiled, and bowed his head. A huge crowd gathered on the day of Benz's test drive event. The Minister of the Interior also attended and congratulated Benz. Benz expressed his gratitude to the minister, saying that thanks to his help, the test was completed safely. The minister carefully examined the Motorwagen developed by Benz. Benz encouraged him to take a test ride himself. However, the minister expressed concern, saying the Motorwagen looked a bit weak. In response, Benz explained that the Motorwagen was sturdier than it looked and reassured him it was safe to ride. Following Benz's guidance, the minister sat on the right seat of the Motorwagen. Benz went to the back of the vehicle to prepare for starting the engine. He vigorously spun the large flywheel several times with both hands, and soon the engine started. Benz checked the vehicle by adjusting the carburetor valve under the seat to ensure stable operation. The Motorwagen Model 2 was equipped with an engine weighing about 100 kilograms and included a modern oil system and crankcase mechanism. The exhaust system was not much different from that of modern cars, but the control equipment in the driver's seat was still insufficient. It had only the minimal features: a small lever for steering, a lever acting as an accelerator, and a brake pedal. Benz began to drive slowly along the public road with the minister on board. The minister was fascinated by the petroleum-powered car for the first time, but he was frustrated by its slow speed. He thought the Motorwagen was sleek, but not as high-performing as Benz had claimed. Doubting its commercial potential, he pointed out the speed to Benz. Benz smiled despite the minister's reaction. As Benz and the minister drove along the road, a carriage was following behind them. The carriage was loaded with milk cans and pulled by a single horse. Because the Motorwagen was so slow, the coachman had to follow it for a while, and when the road widened, he eventually overtook it and shouted. The coachman mocked that walking would be faster, and upon hearing this, the minister's face turned red. He was furious at the fact that the Motorwagen was slower than a heavily loaded carriage. Boiling with anger, the minister declared he would never allow this iron donkey to run in Mannheim again, and demanded that the car be stopped immediately. Benz stopped the Motorwagen and looked at the minister. As the minister angrily tried to get out, Benz calmly spoke. The reason the Motorwagen was running slowly was due to a speed limit imposed by the police chief. For public safety, the police restricted the speed to 6 km per 1 hour within the city and 11 km per 1 hour outside, and Benz was simply complying with that. The minister, who was about to get out, paused after hearing Benz's words. He looked back at Benz and again asked why he hadn't driven faster. Benz explained the police-imposed speed limits and added that the Motorwagen's actual performance was far superior. At the time, Benz had improved the Motorwagen's engine output to 2 horsepower. That is, it had the power equivalent to 2 horses pulling the Motorwagen. As a result, the car could reach a top speed of 16 km per 1 hour, which was superior to any other automobile at the time. Upon learning about the police chief's speed limit, the minister became furious again and told Benz to return to the test drive venue at full speed. At the minister's command, Benz pushed the Motorwagen beyond its limit, and its impressive performance caught the attention of people on the street. It didn't feel bad to be the center of attention while riding in a fast car. As people's eyes focused on them, the minister felt better and expressed great satisfaction with the Motorwagen's performance. Despite its small size, he was amazed by its unexpectedly fast speed and repeatedly expressed his admiration. Unlike at the beginning, Benz and the minister quickly arrived back at the test venue and got off the Motorwagen. As soon as he got off, the minister called for the police chief. As soon as he confirmed that the police chief had imposed speed limits on Benz's Motorwagen, he flew into a rage. He scolded the police chief harshly, saying that vehicles are meant to move fast and no one would use them if unreasonable speed limits were imposed. He firmly instructed that no vehicle in Mannheim should be subject to speed limits in the future. As a result, Benz's Motorwagen was no longer subject to speed restrictions and could travel freely on the roads. This decision by the minister resolved the conflict between the police chief and Benz, and is said to have led to the creation of Germany's unlimited speed highway, the Autobahn, according to legend. Meanwhile, in the evening after all the test drive events had ended, Benz was meeting a man near his home. The man greeted him politely and expressed deep gratitude. The man Benz met was none other than the milk delivery coachman who had overtaken the Motorwagen and shouted insults earlier that day. The coachman said it was actually amusing and satisfying to have had the chance to insult the minister directly. Benz revealed that he had asked the coachman in advance before the test drive event and thanked him again. The coachman gladly agreed to Benz's request, and thanks to that, the test drive included an even more dramatic moment. Because of the police chief's warning, the Motorwagen had to travel at 6 km/h 1 hour in the city, and Benz had asked the milk cart to overtake him. At Benz's request, the coachman, not knowing that the man sitting next to Benz was the minister, had even thrown in some insults. Thus, thanks to Benz's scheme, he took another step toward the success of the gasoline-powered automobile. However, despite Benz's successful test drive event, he failed to commercialize the Motorwagen. Only the upper-class people at the test drive could afford to buy the Motorwagen, but they remarked, "Is this noisy and vulgar thing really made for people to ride?" and had no intention of buying it. As a result, Benz's Motorwagen was ignored and failed to find a market.